Hi, my name is Jackie. I am a co-host for Meeple Skills on the Project Nerd podcast network. I also help with the Project Nerd Twitter account, and sometimes I help stream from the Project Nerd Twitch account. I can also be found on the internet as Lucky Halfling on Twitter and The Lucky Halfling on Twitch. And I am obsessed with board games, so I have a very large board game collection. I have 105 board games in physical copies. If you add in how many board games I have on either computer or on my Switch as digitized board games, that number goes up to 116. So I own a lot of board games, and if you think about how many board games I actually know how to play, because I have games I know how to play that I don't own yet, at that point I probably know the rules to about 200 and some games. But I absolutely love board games. My favorite places to get new board games are two of my local stores. My big favorite is Game Cafe in Independence, Missouri. They support the podcast a lot. They have a demo wall, and they let us use that demo wall all the time to borrow games so that we can test out games and kind of run through different podcast scenarios. The manager there is really good about ordering board games for me that the store might not normally carry, so it's really good to get to know your local gaming store if you are into board games, because they will often help you out even if they aren't regularly carrying what you're looking for. It's always a good thing to ask. The other store I love working with is Pawn and Pint in Kansas City, Missouri. Pawn and Pint is a local store, and it's really more of a board game get-together. So it's actually more of a bar. It's a board game bar. And you can go and you can play the different board games and try them out. They have a very small selection, but they're also very helpful to the podcast, partially because they have such a large collection that they will let me take a part of and play so that I can strategize for future podcast episodes. I started playing board games about 5 years ago. I actually originally started in my gaming adventure with Magic the Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons. So I had actually been invited to join a bunch of different Dungeons & Dragons groups when I was in college, but I never really got time to actually participate in any of those. So my husband and I learned from my aunt how to play, and we actually started on 4th edition. Then we quickly moved into 5th edition when we found a gaming group locally that we could play with and learn more about it. So then we've been playing 5th edition ever since. And then about that same time of playing D&D, my husband got super into Magic the Gathering, and I learned to play it so that I could play with him in the evenings. And I never truly loved it, but I did enjoy it. And then one of our friends, who is also into Magic and Dungeons & Dragons, once came over and he wanted to play a board game night. And I was really not impressed with this idea. I was like, really? We're going to play Candyland? If we have 4 people together, we should be playing Dungeons & Dragons. But he talked us into it, and he brought with him Red Dragon Inn with the Pirate Edition, and then he brought Betrayal at House on the Hill and Settlers of Catan. And I loved all of them. They were fantastic. So that was kind of what got me started. And initially, it was just supposed to be a hobby. I thought, I will have these board games and a few others, and then I'll have them when people come over to play with me. And it just didn't end there. I got Settlers of Catan and Betrayal at House on the Hill and Red Dragon Inn. I got a different version of Red Dragon Inn, and it just kept growing from there.
So this is my collection of board games. As I mentioned, I have 105 physical games. I've collected this over quite a while. Some of these were gifts, so I didn't buy all of them, but yes, a majority of them I did actually purchase. Some of my favorites are, I really like Everdell. Everdell's over here. It's a really pretty one. Sorcerer is one of my favorites. Star Trek Panic turned out to be really good. We were all surprised by that one. We have A Song of Ice and Fire, which is one of the Game of Thrones games. That one hasn't hit the table very much just because of the huge setup time for it. This is all of our Magic stuff. So this is the Magic collection. It's mostly Ethan's. I have a few decks. Mostly mine's a Commander deck, and it is in fact a Kalia deck inside a Kalia box. But overall, that's Magic. This is my board games. I don't have very many classic games, as you may have noticed. I've got Scrabble and Taboo and Jenga, but I did not keep very many of those. Yeah. And yes, this is in fact 2 rows deep.
Because I love board games so much, I've actually attended several conventions. I've been to Gen Con in 2018, which is the big board gaming convention. I was at Origins Game Fair in 2019, which is a very big board gaming convention and very fun. And then I've been to some smaller ones, more locally situated. I've been to Midwest Game Fest in Kansas City twice, and I've been to NukeCon in Omaha one time. We went there last year in 2019 as a podcast, and that's a really fun local convention as well if you live in the Omaha area. My favorite games actually tend to move around. I have different favorites over time depending on what I'm currently playing. Currently, my favorites are Sorcerer by White Wizard Games, Founders of Gloomhaven by Cephalofair Games, and Kingsburg. And I can't remember what company that one's from. But those are my 3 favorites, and part of the reason I put them in my all-time favorites list is because those are games that I am consistently coming back to, that are always in my top 5. So those 3 I think are very strong contenders for being my favorite of all-time games. My favorite type of game to play is actually Euro games or worker placements. I absolutely love worker placement games. They make up a majority of my collection. In fact, one of my friends who isn't really big into board games says that my favorite games are the ones where part of the game is figuring out the rules, because worker placements tend to come with a very large rule book. So she's not wrong about that. Currently, I am playing a lot of different board games. I've been really into legacy games lately. Right before the pandemic kind of started and before we had all these lockdowns, I was playing through 2 legacy games. I was playing through Betrayal Legacy with a group of friends and Gloomhaven with my roommate. We put Betrayal on hold because we want to play that with the group that we started with. I haven't gotten much further in Gloomhaven just because Gloomhaven is a lot of setup, and even though I really enjoy it, because we are at the house all the time, we have to take it down all the time to be able to eat at the table. So that's kind of a downer. So currently, I've been playing Clank Legacy. That's one of the newest ones that we acquired. Our roommate, Michael, plays with me a lot, and we have gotten quite a ways through this one already. I also challenged myself over the lockdown. When the lockdown started, I had about 20 games that I had never played before. I owned, but had never played. So I challenged myself to play all of the board games I already owned, which I was able to complete learning all of them except for 3. I did have 3 board games I wasn't able to during the lockdown because they require more people than we have in my household. So I'm just going to have to wait until this is lifted and so I can invite people over so that I can finish those last 3. But I felt like I had completed it to the best of my ability, so I did buy 2 more games, which I now have no longer finished all of them. So I have Castles of Mad King Ludwig here and Runebound 3rd edition. I actually had traded someone and I had Runebound 1st edition initially, and so I know how to play this game. It's just that I haven't played this version yet, and I'm very excited to dig into that. And then I've got Castles of Mad King Ludwig, as I mentioned. I actually don't know much about that. It keeps getting recommended to me, so I bought it, but I don't actually know much about what it's going to be, so that is exciting too. These other 2 games I have out, these are actually games I have played a lot of. These stay upstairs. Most of my collection is in the basement. These stay upstairs because I might want to play them at any point in time. Tiny Epic Tactics by Gamelin Games has one of the best solo modes I've ever encountered. So I keep it up here in case I'm desperate enough to play a game where I play by myself. And then Dungeon Mayhem is a really quick game. It is the absolute perfect game to play between games if you're playing longer games during a game day, or just the perfect game to play before you go to bed at night because it's very quick. Most games are like 15 minutes, but they can last as long as 30 minutes depending on how the cards play out and how stabby you are. The other game I have up here is Nasty Woman, which is actually a game I picked up at a bookstore. I'm very curious about. It uses feminist quotes and works a lot like Cards Against Humanity. I haven't actually gotten to play this one yet either, but I am excited to test that one out. That's another one that's going to just require more people because it's more of a party style game. I still have a very large list of games I want to get. I learn about these games either through Board Game Geek or I do listen to the Dice Tower podcast quite a bit. The other way I keep up to date with all of the board games that are coming out and what the different companies are doing is I actually follow the companies on Instagram and Twitter so that I can see what they're up to and what their next moves are. I really like doing that because honestly, my absolute favorite board gaming company is White Wizard Games, who makes Sorcerer, Hero Realms, Epic, Star Realms is actually the one they're known for the most, and now Kapow, I believe it's called. And they always kickstart their games first. So they're a big company I keep an eye on because I want to know when that next one's coming out. So that's very exciting for me. If you want to hear more about what I think about different board games and as I'm going through all of these board games and evaluating them, you can hear all about it on Meeple Skills, which I do with my friend Alyssa and my husband Ethan. You can catch that. We do it monthly, and we try to release on the first Monday of the month. So join us on Project Nerd. Check out all of our nerdy content, and thank you so much for listening.